I stay in this room, I get weaker. And every minute Charlie squats in the bush, he gets stronger.
Hey guys, welcome back to Physical Preparedness Group. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of mobility in worst case scenarios and why you need to be training so that your ability to stay mobile in those scenarios is a resource and not a liability. First, I want to emphasize why the ability to stay mobile is so important for preparedness-minded people, and so we're going to hear former Green Beret Mike Glover speak on that.
And even when I was a team sergeant and I had a team of snipers, I started looking at fitness differently because I went, well, your job is to be fit in the role of running around with kit and then doing whatever is required of you during that rotation.
Yeah.
And so they would be like, well, what are we doing for PT today? I'm like, run to the range in all your kit that you're going to shoot with, and then shoot for 4 hours, and then run back. And they're like, that's like a 12-mile run. Like, well, that's what you're going to do.
Anyone who's followed me for a good amount of time will know how much I emphasize strength training and how important I think it is. But something that really gets not talked about enough is what we're going to be doing in these worst case scenarios, which is running. We're going to be running a lot. These situations where infrastructure and law and order have broken down are very dynamic, and they're constantly changing. And so we need to be able to change with those situations if we want to survive. If you look at this French riot that just happened recently, don't look at the punches being thrown or the flags being waved around. Look at the people's feet. Look at how much movement there is going on. We can safely assume that the majority of these people aren't trained athletes or fighters. But as you can see, their natural instinct that they fall back into is that of movement, so that they can get out of the way of attacks or put themselves in a position to attack. If we look at high-level fighters, we see something very similar, although it's much more efficient. We see a lot of movement. These guys are never holding still. They're always readjusting themselves. They're always aligning their position with that of their opponent. They're always moving out of the way, staying off the center line, trying to stay out of the line of attack. Movement is absolutely essential to survival. And if we take a look at situations where firearms are involved, then that becomes even more true. Don't look at the guns, don't look at who's being shot, look at the feet, look at the movement. Even this wounded man who's been shot in the leg is doing his best to stay as mobile as possible so that he can put himself in a position to attack or stay away from gunfire. Look at how dynamic the movement of the officer is. He's moving backwards, he's shuffling to the side. If he did not move, he would most likely have been hit, he would have most likely been seriously injured or possibly have died. If we start to look at movement on a macro scale, on a large scale, we're talking about entire countries that are in violent, chaotic scenarios. The demand for mobility is the same. If you look at the Yugoslavian Civil War, take a look at how dynamic the front lines are over not a course of years, but a course of months. It's easy to imagine yourself as a civilian in one of these contested areas where your town or city might change hands between opposing forces multiple times, where the front line is constantly moving and the areas where fighting is most intense is constantly moving. And so the need for mobility still remains. But the demands of the situation have changed, so we don't need to move short distances quickly, we now need to move long distances at a sustainable pace. So I hope we've established the importance of your ability to run and stay mobile. Now let's talk training. No one likes to run, except for maybe David Goggins, but I don't like to run, you don't like to run. The guys in the military who are running marathons every week in their training, they don't like to run. The reality is we need to run. And if you can't run, you need to gain the ability to run. And if you can run, you need to run better. All of the points that we're going to be covering are general statements that are going to help guide your decision making, but as a rule, you need to remember that your circumstance is unique to you and your needs are going to dictate how you train and how you progress your training. So your optimal training plan is going to look different than someone else's optimal training plan. So that's going to be something very important to remember throughout all this. I'm going to try my best to speak in terms of those of you who are brand new beginners and those of you who are already training somewhat consistently but want to get even better. The first thing we're going to want to establish is a starting point. The first thing you want to think of is sustainability. Progress in any physical domain or activity is not made over the course of weeks. Real, legitimate progress is made over a course of months and over years. And in order to do that, we need to be consistent. And so training has to be something that we can do month after month and year after year. So if you're just getting up off the couch and you're trying to run 2, 3, 4 miles and your knees are killing you and your back's killing you and that's just your first run of the week, that's not sustainable. So we have to first establish a starting point that is sustainable. So if you're relatively new and you're getting up off the couch, or you've only been exercising consistently for a year or less, you're going to want to start at an intensity and volume level that feels too easy. The reason for this is twofold. One, most people when they start training get very, very excited and they want to do a lot of work. They want to put in a lot of miles. They want to lift a lot of weights. And initially, that can lead to a lot of problems, stemming from people not being able to recover properly from the stress of training. The second reason is that we need our body to be able to go through what's called a stimulus recovery adaptation process, where essentially your body's adapting to the stress that you're giving it and it's getting better, but it needs time to do that. And you can always do a little bit more work, but what you can't do is go back and say, oh, I shouldn't have ran so much and now I hurt my knee. I shouldn't have ran so much and now I've hurt my ankle. In my personal experience, coming from years as a strength and conditioning coach, it's much more effective in the long term to start off a little too slow than start off a little too fast. Because over the course of weeks and months, we're going to be adding laps and adding miles to your running program. And so if you start off hot right out of the gate, and you're doing a little bit more than you can sustain, that doesn't leave room for you to progress. It doesn't leave room for you to grow. You might be able to add distance or cut off time from your run for a week or two, but then you're pushing so hard that you don't have any room to grow. And when you push hard like that consistently and you haven't been training for a long time, that's where we start to run into pain and injury issues, and we really want to avoid that if we can. So you're going to do something that might feel a little bit too easy, something that you're confident that you can do at least 3 times a week, possibly every other day. And even if it is too easy, you don't have to worry, because next week and the week after and the week after, you're going to be building on that and the workouts are going to get progressively harder. We just need to make sure that your body has time to go through that stimulus recovery adaptation process. So this list is kind of a general idea of a way you can progress your training as far as the running movement itself. If you're just getting up off the couch, you might want to go for a walk, and maybe you do that for a week or two and you progressively go for longer walks. And if you're finding, oh, I have a little knee pain, I have a little foot pain, or whatever it may be, that is just an indicator that your muscles, your tendons, your ligaments are deconditioned and they're not prepared for the stress of you walking around a bunch, which is very common in our society because we spend the vast majority of our days sitting and eating. And you're going to want to walk consistently in a progressive manner for several weeks before you even start to think about running. Once you have a few weeks of just normal walking around and you're progressing the difficulty of those walks by maybe trying to walk a little bit faster or trying to walk uphill or walking for longer distances, then you can start to think about doing things to make your walking even more difficult, like walking up stairs, walking up steep inclines, and then once you've done a couple weeks of that, you can start to think about running. The need to progress your training gradually and slow enough for your body to be able to adapt to the new stress you're giving it becomes even more important for people who are significantly overweight or are getting a little bit older. But regardless of where you're starting, how bad a shape you're in, how good a shape you're in, you can make progress. It's all about allowing your body to go through that stimulus recovery adaptation process. So these are a couple examples of how you can progressively overload your training in an incremental fashion so that we're not trying to do twice as much as we did the week before. And so your body has time to go through that process that we've been talking so much about. And the principle remains the same whether you're walking, running, doing stair sprints, whatever you're doing. The important thing is that you guys get out there and you start and you try your best to be consistent. It might be twice a week, it might be 3 times a week, it might be every day, but be consistent week after week and month after month, and that's where the real progress comes from. That's where the weight loss comes from. That's how you get stronger. That's how we get in better shape, and that's how we increase our ability to be more self-reliant physically. I know we've talked about a lot in this video, but like I said, the most important thing is that you get up off the couch and you get started. If you guys are struggling to get to the point where you can run or run consistently, or even if you're just struggling to implement running into training that you're already doing, I'd be more than happy to try and help you answer any questions you have. Feel free to shoot me an email. I'll leave my email address below, or you can come and have a conversation with me on Instagram. That's probably the best way to go, simply because we have the direct message. Please comment down below what physical fitness and preparedness related topics you would like to see addressed in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Instagram, and I will see you in the next video.